It's the holiday season, and if you're looking for an indulgent dessert that isn't going to use up all of your bites, points, or calories, I've got the perfect solution for you here. This is my light magic gingerbread pie. That's right, gingerbread in a pie. So if you're tired of the cookies and you don't want a heavy piece of cake, stick around because I'm going to show you how to do this coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I'm a home cook and amateur baker, and I'm here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now today is another one of my magic pies, but this one is just in time for the holidays. This is going to be my magic gingerbread pie. And don't worry, eggnog lovers, I do have an eggnog pie that is coming up in a collab that is going to be coming out on the 17th, Sunday the 17th at 9 a.m. And if you just can't get enough of those flavors, I did do cheesecakes in those flavors as well. And I will card the video up here that I just did for making a cheesecake. That was a test of an eggnog cheesecake. I'd already done the gingerbread, so I wanted to test an eggnog. I finally perfected them, and I have those on the blog, as well as just a basic cheesecake if you want to put any topping on it that you want. And just so you know, my partner Paul says that it is the best version of a cheesecake that I have come up with that is so low in bites and points, you'll be shocked. But that's a past video, so go check that out. But for now, we're doing a magic gingerbread pie. And you know, I've been doing a lot of these magic pies lately. They're based on the impossible pies that Bisquick used to come up with. I just fell in love with coming up with different versions, especially now that the holidays are approaching. I mean, yes, there were gingerbread cookies and gingerbread cakes, but a gingerbread pie that has a nice creamy interior, so good. So you have options if you are a gingerbread lover. But before we get to making this, we have to go over the ingredients. I have here, of course, my cooking spray. I have a 9-inch pie plate over here that I'm going to be pouring this into. Yes, this is a pourable recipe. And even easier, we're doing it in the blender. Now my pie plate is a 9.5, but it's fine. It's a little thinner than it would be in a 9-inch, but just as good. I have here 1 cup of almond milk, and that is at room temperature. I always prefer, especially for baking, as many of you know, and you're probably tired of hearing it, room temperature ingredients come together best. Here I have 4 large eggs, and those are going to help us to get a creamy texture from this pie. As is 1/4 cup of pumpkin puree. Now, you don't have to use pumpkin puree if you don't have any on hand, you don't want to use it. You can replace it for 1/4 cup of non-fat Greek yogurt. But I really do enjoy the texture that I get by using the pumpkin puree. It just gives it a nice creaminess, but Greek yogurt will do just fine. Here I have a 1-ounce package of sugar-free Jell-O pudding mix. I'm using butterscotch because butterscotch is going to pair with the gingerbread flavors perfectly. You could use vanilla if you can't find butterscotch, but it will mute the flavors just slightly. But you could use white chocolate, you could use vanilla, but I really prefer butterscotch, so if you can find that, it's best. Now, one thing I did want to note, this is now 0 sugar Jell-O pudding mix. The sugar-free Jell-O pudding mix, if you put in the entire package, would come up at 3 bites or old Blue Points. I'm on the Healthy Better Balance plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan. And a whole package would come up as 3 bites or points. This one is coming up as 2, so I don't know what they've done to the formula. It's now 1 bite or point less for the entire package, which is what we will be using. Here I have 1/3 cup of brown sugar replacement. Now obviously brown sugar is the preferred choice because it has a molasses flavor, which allows me to use less actual molasses, which would increase the bites, points, calories, etc. If you don't have brown sugar replacement, you can't find it, you don't want to buy it, you can use, instead of 1/3 cup of the brown sugar replacement, you can use 1/4 cup of granulated sugar replacement, plus add another tablespoon of molasses. Now the molasses and the granulated sugar replacement will act kind of like the brown sugar, but it may affect the bites or points. Here I have 1/2 cup of flour, and that's the replacement for the Bisquick, and I'm also adding a few other things just to replace that and give us the lift and the structure that we're looking for. This is the magic portion. This is going to help make a crust without making a crust, which is where a lot of the bites, points, and calories could come from. Here I have 2 tablespoons of molasses. Molasses is very common in gingerbread, cookies, cakes, what have you. So I wanted to use some actual molasses because I didn't want to rely on putting in too much of the brown sugar replacement and having it become too sweet. But this is going to be just sweet enough, not overly sweet. Here I have 1½ teaspoons of baking powder, and that is part of what's helping us replace the Bisquick is the baking powder, the flour, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now I have one more ingredient. However, in the recipe, it's actually 4 ingredients. They are the spices that are going to give us a gingerbread flavor. Now I've opted to go for the gingerbread spice blend that I made last year and I'm almost out of. I don't just use this for gingerbread. I use it on pork, on chicken. It's very versatile, so I use it fairly often for other things than just baking. So here I have 1 3/4 teaspoon of the gingerbread spice blend. That is on my blog if you want to make it yourself. I don't think I've ever seen gingerbread spice blends in the supermarket, but they may be out there. I don't know. They may be on Amazon. But you can make it yourself so easily with the spices that you already have on hand. Now, as I said in the recipe, that is replacing 4 ingredients. So you can use either the gingerbread spice blend or 3/4 teaspoon of ginger, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1/4 teaspoon of cloves. Now that's in the recipe, so you don't have to worry about trying to remember it or write it down. And in the notes of the recipe, it will say you can replace those spices for 1 3/4 teaspoon of the gingerbread spice blend. All right, so those are all of our ingredients. I'm just going to shuffle a few things around and get my blender in here and we'll get started. Okay, so I have my blender ready. I've sprayed my 9-inch pie plate. One thing I did want to mention about the baking spray or cooking spray is when you are measuring things like molasses, syrup, that kind of thing, what you can do is spray your utensil that you're going to measure with, a cup, a tablespoon, a teaspoon, what have you. Spray it with a little cooking spray before you pour the honey, the maple syrup, the molasses into it. Comes out much easier. And speaking of easy, this recipe couldn't be easier. We are just going to dump everything into our blender, blend it up, and get it into our pie plate. Can't be easier than that. So we're going to start off with the almond milk, the eggs, brown sugar replacement, pudding mix, flour, spices, salt, baking powder, molasses, and the pumpkin. Then we're just going to put on our lid and we are going to blend this for about 30 seconds. Then we're going to scrape down the sides. We want to make sure that that flour gets incorporated and isn't stuck to the sides of our carafe here. So let me blend this up and then we'll scrape it down. Okay, so that was about 20 seconds or so. I'm just going to scrape down the edges if I see any flour sticking, and I do over here. And you just want to make sure you're getting all of that flour incorporated because, as I said, that is going to be our binder, our crust. It's going to really help this pie come together. So now I'm going to put the lid back on and just blend it up for about another 20 to 30 seconds until it's all fully incorporated. And there we have it. It doesn't take very long for it to all come together, but as I've shown in other videos, You can do all of this by hand, mix the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients separately at first, then add in the dry and incorporate them so you don't overwork the flour. Or you can also do it with a hand mixer. Just do the same thing, mix the dry, mix the wet, and then combine them. But this is so much easier and comes together pretty quickly. So let me move this aside. I'm gonna move in my pie plate and then just take our pie batter and pour that right in. And I still have my spatula so that I can make sure I get everything out of the carafe. That is supposed to be in here. If I'm spreading the bites and points, I'm gonna use it. All right, and as you can see, I do have my pie plate sitting on top of a baking sheet. That is just in case there's any spillover. In particular with me, my arms may spasm as I'm trying to get this over to the oven. So I wanna make sure that I don't send this flying all over the floor. So I have a little insurance, but you don't have to have that. You'll also see a lot of bubbles on the top here, and I'm just going to try to get rid of a lot of those. You don't have to worry about the small ones. You just wanna get some of the larger ones to pop. Then I also like to give it a little shake and bang it on the counter a little bit gently because I'm using a Pyrex dish here, but that'll just help to bring some of that to the surface. Now this is going into my preheated 350-degree oven for about 45 to 50 minutes until a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean. And you will notice as this is baking, it's going to souffle a bit, partly because of the eggs and partly because of the baking powder. But afterwards, as it cools, it will settle down. So don't worry if you look in and you see it swelling up out of the pie plate. It's going to do that, it's fine, it's normal. Just don't you worry, it's going to all work out in the end, but I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out of the oven. So give me 45-50 minutes and I'll be back. All right, and there we have it, my gingerbread magic pie. Now you may see that it's kind of puffed up over the edge of the pie plate. That is normal. As it cools, it's going to sink down. And you can see there are a lot of cracks, which has not happened to me before, but I think that may be due to the fact that I added another egg to this from the original, and it may have souffled a little bit more. But this is gonna sink down, it's gonna compress, it's not even going to be a problem. I'm not worried about it in the least. Now, what you would have to do is let this cool for at least half an hour. If you know me and these magic pies, I honestly prefer letting it cool to room temperature and then storing it in the fridge before eating it, but you don't have to. If you wouldn't mind a warm piece of gingerbread pie, go right ahead, half an hour and you can serve it. And you can see it's already beginning to sink into place. Once it cools, it'll be almost like a regular pie. This edge will create the crust that you typically see on the edge of a pie. It's gonna be delicious and it smells great in here. Definitely smells like Christmas. Now, I'm not gonna wait until this cools down and I refrigerate it and yada yada before I give you all of the information that you really want. You've already seen a picture of what this looks like in the intro, and just to make sure, I will add a little clip here just so you know what it looks like when you have a nice slice of this delicious pie on your plate. Now this, just like my other magic pies, it's going to serve 8. You can obviously make that change. You could make it serve 6, you could make it serve 10, 12, what have you. I am doing it as serving 8. And as I said, I'm on the Healthy Better Balance plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan. So for me, one slice of this delicious pie is only going to be 2 Better Balance bites or old Blue points. Now, if you are following calories, the calories for 1/8 of this pie is going to be 99. And if you are following macros, the fat is going to be 3 grams. Saturated fat is 0.8 grams. Protein is 4.2 grams. Carbs are 21.7 grams. Fiber is 0.5 grams. And sugars are 3.6 grams for 1/8 of this pie. Now these magic pies are so easy. Many people have tried my maple pecan, my apple pies, and have been raving about them. So I'm pretty sure you'll have the same feelings about this gingerbread pie if you're a gingerbread fan. But if you're not, wait until Sunday the 17th at 9 a.m. and I'll give you an eggnog version if that's your preference. But I hope that you enjoyed this video and this recipe, and if you did, I'd appreciate the usual like, subscribe, comment, share, and hit that notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video, such as the collab coming up on the 17th, hint, hint. Now the recipe for this is going to be linked in the description box. I'll link directly to this recipe as well as to the blog itself if you're looking for any of my recipes, such as my cheesecake recipes that I told you about. Also down there are links to my Amazon storefront, my Built Bar rewards, Fetch rewards, and my social media if you'd like to follow me over there. I have my Instagram and 3 Facebook groups that I'm part of, so check out that description box for all sorts of information. All right, so now I have to wait and let this cool down before I can dig in. I may actually try it at the half-hour mark. It's smelling so good. But I hope that you're going to give this a try for the holidays or for whenever you're in the mood for gingerbread. So until next time, bye.